Buried behind a collapsed barn in rural West Virginia is an unmarked grave. Locals say it belongs to a man who never left his home in the hollow, who talked in riddles, and slept with his doors locked from the outside. He called his sister his wife. They shared one bed, one last name, and a legacy the county has spent over a century trying to erase. The records are gone. The neighbors won't speak, but something is still buried out there, something no one has ever explained until now. Hello everyone. Before we get started, be sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment telling us where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will continue to show you more stories just like this one. They called him Ellis. No middle name, no birth certificate, just Ellis. He was born in a one-room shack nestled deep in the hills of Boone County, West Virginia. It was so far off the map that census takers had to be bribed to make the trip. They say the trees on his family's land grew closer together, as if nature itself was trying to keep them in, or perhaps keep others out. Ellis's mother was also his aunt. His father? That's unclear. Some say it was her brother, others say it was her cousin. But the bloodline was already tangled long before Ellis ever took his first steps. When you trace his ancestry, what little of it still exists in the form of brittle Bible pages and faded tombstones, you find the same 5 last names repeating over and over again. Marriages between first cousins, siblings listed as spouses, and children with no birth year, just a season, winter 1887, spring, maybe 1892. No one really knew, or if they did, they refused to write it down. Ellis never went to school. The county tried to force them once, but after a social worker vanished on the property in 1926, the state stopped pushing. His family claimed she had wandered off into the woods and frozen. Locals whispered a different story, that she had seen something she shouldn't have, that she ran screaming from the house with no shoes, and that her fingerprints were found on the window glass days after the snow fell. But no charges were ever filed, no body was recovered, just rumors. And Ellis, pale, sharp-eyed, and silent, watched from the shadows, always watching. He was 13 the first time someone heard him call his sister wife. She was 2 years older than him. Her name was Clara, but Ellis never called her that, not in public or in private. To him, she was always wife. Never sister, never Clara, just wife. They lived alone after the fire. The official story was lightning. The unofficial version said something else, something about a baby's cry coming from under the floorboards, something about screams that stopped too suddenly, too completely. Their mother and father were never found in the ashes, just bone fragments, some burned cloth, and a cradle that hadn't been used in years. After that, the land was passed to Ellis. He would have been just a boy, no more than 15. But there was no contest. No relatives came forward. No government agents intervened. The deed was rewritten, and Ellis became the last living heir of a bloodline no one wanted to claim. And Clara? She never left the property again. They boarded up the windows, let the porch rot, refused mail, and wouldn't allow electricity. The only visitors were animals, and even they eventually stopped coming. A neighbor once said they saw Ellis digging in the middle of the night, shirtless, his back striped with something too symmetrical to be from branches. He was murmuring as he shoveled, repeating the same phrase, "Wife don't cry. Wife don't cry. Wife don't cry." The neighbor didn't get close enough to ask what he was burying. When a priest from Charleston tried to visit after hearing rumors of an unholy union, he left after just 30 minutes and never spoke of what he saw again. He retired the following week, but stories still leaked. A traveling doctor in 1941 described Ellis's face as off. His words, not mine. Not wrong, just collapsed in the wrong places, like the architecture of the skull had been recycled too many times. He claimed Clara couldn't speak at all, she just stared, blinked, and rocked back and forth. When he asked about children, Ellis simply said, "None yet lived long." That phrase never left the doctor's notes. None yet lived long. The doctor reported the family to the state. 2 men were dispatched to investigate. Neither reached the house. One turned back after getting violently ill in the woods. The other disappeared for 3 days. When he returned, he resigned and moved out of state. He said only one thing to his superior before leaving: "That boy is not human anymore." Ellis and Clara became phantoms, spoken of at gas stations and whispered about at barbershops, but never seen. And yet, sightings trickled in. In 1954, a young woman claimed she heard a baby crying near their woods at night. She followed the sound for nearly half a mile before she came to a clearing. No cradle, no baby, just Ellis crouched in the snow with something in his hands. He didn't speak, he didn't move. He just stared. She ran. She said the baby's cry didn't stop, even after she had made it back to her truck. It kept echoing in her ears, too perfectly looped, like a recording, like it wasn't real. By then, the family had been isolated for over 30 years. And yet, irregular medical records, half buried in archives, suggested Clara had given birth multiple times. No names, no details, just notations in the margins: delivery incomplete, deformities noted, no viable issue. Locals started to say the land was cursed, that no child conceived on that soil would ever draw a breath for more than a few hours, that the bloodline had imploded on itself. Generation after generation of unbroken incest, turning the body inward like a house collapsing room by room. And Ellis didn't seem to mind. In fact, some believed he preferred it that way. A nurse who claimed to treat him for a leg wound in 1959 said he spoke in fragments, like reciting prayers that didn't belong to any church. He told her that his children weren't meant for the world, that the old blood keeps what it wants. She said his skin was almost translucent, blue veins spiraling like roots beneath the surface. When she asked about Clara, he simply smiled and said, "Wife is home. Wife knows not to stray." No official birth records were ever filed for any of Clara's pregnancies, but a child's grave appeared on the property sometime in the 1960s. A handmade wooden marker, charred at the base. No name, just the word "waited" carved into it with a knife. Authorities tried again in 1967 to intervene. A team of 4 this time, armed with warrants and rifles. They didn't find Ellis or Clara. They found furniture nailed to the ceiling, children's shoes hanging from the rafters, and a dozen dolls with their faces burned off. But no people, not even footprints in the dust, as if they had vanished into the walls. The state declared them dead in 1968. A quiet ruling, no investigation, no autopsies, just a filing in a dusty courthouse that no one ever followed up on. But the people who lived nearby didn't buy it. Hunters still claimed to hear footsteps that didn't echo right. Photographers who trespassed to snap photos of the infamous cabin said their equipment would glitch, resulting in overexposed frames, smudges that looked like hands, and shadows where no one stood. And then came the boy. He showed up in 1974 at a general store 10 miles from the Ash Hollow land. Couldn't have been more than 10 or 11. Filthy shoes on the wrong feet. He spoke in a garbled dialect no one recognized at first until a woman said it sounded like Appalachian English, but slowed down like a record on the wrong speed. He asked for "cord bread and Jesus candle." When pressed, he said his name was Ellis, not Junior, not the second, just Ellis. He said his mother was sick, that she lived in the floor now, and that his wife told him to fetch light. The store owner called the sheriff. The boy didn't wait. He left the same way he came, through a field no one knew connected to anything. They searched for weeks. Bloodhounds refused to cross the hollow line. One dog died after entering. Another ran straight into a ravine. But the boy had left something behind, a drawing scrawled in charcoal on butcher paper. It showed 4 figures, 1 large, 2 small, and 1 half buried in the ground. In the top right corner, he had written, "She's under but still sings." The handwriting was nearly identical to Ellis's signature from property records in the 1930s. No trace of the boy was ever found again. Years later, in the 1990s, a group of urban explorers found the cabin again. It was falling apart but strangely preserved. Inside, they found shelves lined with glass jars. Each one was filled with teeth, some baby teeth, some adult, all labeled not with names, but with relationships, daughter, sister, wife. They turned the footage into a documentary. It aired once, then was pulled. Legal threats, unnamed plaintiffs, even the production company that made it no longer exists. But one frame still circulates online. It shows a man in the background, thin and pale, standing completely still behind a broken window. His eyes are wide, his hands pressed flat against the glass. Someone enhanced the image, printed it, studied it, and found 6 fingers on each hand. If you're still watching, you're already braver than most. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if this was your bloodline? What happened next was never made public, but fragments still exist, memoirs, field reports, restricted archives. One declassified memo from 2003, originating from a behavioral genetics task force, mentions an anomalous Appalachian strain linked to historic cases of congenital deformity, cognitive loop patterns, and ritualized incestuous bonding. The memo references the Ellis lineage by name, and it concludes with a haunting phrase, "Viability persists in isolation." That same year, hikers near Ash Hollow found fresh prints, human, barefoot, but not quite right. The heel was too narrow, the toes too long, as if the foot had adapted to cling to something we no longer climb. The tracks led to a rusted door in the side of a hill. They didn't go in. They couldn't. Something was humming from behind it. In 2011, a genealogist went missing after attempting to map the Ellis bloodline. He traced it back to 1791, to a coal miner named Elijah Ellis, who married his first cousin in a church that no longer appears on maps. His journals mention a blood vow to remain unbroken, unaltered, and unseen. His descendants followed it religiously. And Ellis? If he died, there's no proof. No grave, no death certificate. Only the rumors that he still walks the hollow at night, whispering names no one remembers. That he dug tunnels beneath the cabin, womb-like spaces where time bends and nothing rots. That his children still live there, not aging, not speaking, just waiting. A woman on Reddit once claimed she escaped the place. Her post was taken down in under an hour, but not before screenshots were saved. She said the walls had hair, that the beds were made of skin, and that someone kept whispering, "Wife, wake up. Wife, wake up," even though no one else was in the room. She described a smell that followed her for weeks, sweet, like rotting fruit and milk. She said she was pregnant when she went in, but not when she came out. And the worst part? She said she recognized her captor from a photo her grandmother kept in a Bible, a photo of her great-uncle taken in 1933. She said the man hadn't aged a day. There's one last detail, one that nearly everyone overlooks. In 2020, a wildfire swept through a portion of Ash Hollow, uncontrolled, fast, fed by dry air and decades of untouched brush. It burned for 3 days. Locals assumed it had finally erased the last remnants of the Ellis place, the cursed land, the bloodline. But when fire crews finally entered the area, they found something unexplainable. The cabin was still intact, not scorched, not even warm, as if the flames had avoided it, like the fire had known better. Inside, they found recent footprints, muddy, bare, leading from the back door to a single chair in the center of the room. On the chair sat a doll, crudely made, stitched from what appeared to be animal hide with real human hair braided down the back. In its lap, a single Polaroid. The image showed 2 figures standing side by side in front of the cabin, a man and a woman, pale, gaunt, smiling. On the back of the photo, a message in faded ink, "We keep to the vow, still husband, still wife." DNA testing was quietly conducted on the hair from the doll. It wasn't animal. It wasn't synthetic. It was human. And it contained markers that don't exist in any known genome database. Experts called it a closed loop, no outside DNA, no mutation, just endless recycling, genetic cul-de-sac. But that's not what frightened the researchers. What frightened them was the presence of something new, a trait never catalogued before. A series of dormant genes were activated in the samples, genes linked to extreme sensory development, altered circadian cycles, and regenerative capabilities that were, in their words, non-terrestrial in origin. The report was buried within weeks. The lab was shut down. No further research was permitted. Still, a copy leaked, and one handwritten note in the margin stood out: if this is where inbreeding leads, it's no longer evolution. It's engineering. Whatever the Ellis family did out there in the woods, however twisted, however unnatural, they may have created something enduring, not human, not anymore. So, if you're ever near Boone County and hear someone call out, "Wife! Wife, come in now," don't answer. Don't follow. And for your own sake, don't look into the window. The land is still there, overgrown, silent, forgotten, but only on paper. Locals avoid it without speaking. Maps show the coordinates as a wildlife preserve, though no signage exists and no permits are granted for entry. It's as if the area has been quietly quarantined, not for toxins, but for memory. Because Ellis, or what he became, was never just one man. He was a culmination, a shape bred in darkness, sustained by secrecy, and sharpened through generations of self-collapse. His family didn't just hide from the world. They abandoned it, rewrote their own rules, and became something else. When people ask why no one stopped it, the answer is always the same: no one wanted to get close enough. Authorities feared a contagion, not of disease, but of influence. They feared that just by observing, documenting, or understanding the Ellis bloodline, others might begin to follow, might begin to believe. There's an old miner's saying from the region, one that predates the Ellis family by over 100 years. It goes, "Don't dig where the earth sings back." For decades, it was thought to be superstition, a warning about gas pockets or sinkholes. But now, it reads differently, as if some part of this place, this land, this blood, remembers. A final note found deep in a private archive may be the closest thing we'll ever get to closure. It's a page from an interview transcript, undated and heavily redacted. The speaker, believed to be a surviving child of the Ellis line, was asked if he understood what his family had done. He answered, it wasn't about love. It wasn't even about blood. It was about keeping something alive that shouldn't have died the first time. He was then asked what that something was. He paused, then whispered, "Memory that walks." To this day, hikers report strange humming near the hollow. Always at dusk, always low and rhythmic. Some say it's the wind. Others say it's the land itself singing back to the ones it remembers. So if you find yourself near Boone County, West Virginia, and you see a weathered cabin at the end of a path that wasn't there yesterday, turn around. Because the man who called his sister, wife, may still be waiting.